Morning guys, today we're going to take a look at page 17 of the Unit 8 Classwork packet. The topic for today is something called the mid-segment of a trapezoid. Recall that way back in Unit 5 we learned about something called the triangle mid-segment theorem, right? We said that a mid-segment was something that connected the midpoints of the sides. The mid-segment of a trapezoid does the same thing. This right here, segment EF, is actually a mid-segment because it connects the midpoints of side AD and side BC. For our purposes though, we only really need to know two things about it, okay? The first is that it's parallel, so if you want to draw like a little arrow in your diagram to show that it's parallel to the other two sides, by all means. But there's actually a special relationship between it and the other two bases. Let me say that again. There's a special relationship between the mid-segment and the bases of the trapezoid. There are two different ways to write this. I'm going to show you the standard way first, and then I'll show you my way, okay? The standard way is to say this, that the mid-segment, whatever it is, equals 1/2 of base 1 plus base 2. Some people prefer that way because what that formula shows is that the mid-segment is just the average of the two bases. Like if I add the bases up and divide by 2, I get the mid-segment. My preference, because it makes the algebra a little bit easier, is actually to show it like this, okay? 2 times the mid-segment equals base 1 plus base 2. So again, I don't care which one you guys actually use, but many of you, trust me on this, will find this one to be much easier to use in the context of a problem, okay? So in this particular case, we could say that it takes 2 times EF to make AB plus DC. Let's see how this would actually work in a couple of problems, shall we? All right, let's start off easy. All right, let's start off with example number 1. Here's what number 1 tells us. Number 1 tells us this is 14. They tell me that this is 26, and they want me to find this, so I'm just going to call that x. Here's what the trapezoid mid-segment theorem tells me. It takes 2 of these to make these added up. So 2 times x equals 14 plus 26. 2 times x equals, 40? And that means x equals 20. Notice that 20 also happens to be the middle number between 14 and 26, right? 20 is 6 units away from 14, and it's 6 units away from 26. Now, it's not always going to be quite that easy. For example, take a look at number 3. Number 3 instead gives us the mid-segment. So they give us this. This is 22, and they tell me this is 38. And they ask me to find this, right? They ask me to find the length of AB. Well, guess what? How many of these does it take to make this added up? It takes 2. So I'm going to say it takes 2 22s to make x and 38 added together. Once again, how did I get this? 2 times the mid-segment equals the bases added up. So 44 equals x plus 38. Subtract 38 from both sides, and I get that in this case, x equals 6. And that actually makes sense, right? Because 22 is 16 units away from 38, and it's also 16 units away from 6. Last but not least, let's take a look at what this might look like algebraically, all right? And for that, let's take a look together at example number 7. Which one? Example number 7. Okay? So this is a slightly different trapezoid. So let me draw that right now. And there's a mid-segment. All right. All right, so that's W, X, V, Y, Z, U. All right, so I've got x plus 7. I've got 8x minus 3. And I've got 6x plus 5. All right, so even though this problem looks a little bit nasty, It's the same concept. It takes 2 times the mid-segment to make the two bases added together. So, in other words, it's going to take 2 times the 8x minus 3 to make these two added up. All right? Now, a couple things happen here. Distributive property on the left, combined like terms on the right. Right? No pun intended. At this point, I'm back to a regular 8th grade pre-algebra problem. Subtract 7x from both sides. Add 6 to both sides. Divide by 9, and I get x equals 2. Problem is, if I stopped right there, I'd be wrong. And the reason I would be wrong is that the problem did not ask for that. They asked me for UV. So what would I have to do? Sorry, did I write x equals x? Oh my god, I need help. Jeez. Sorry about that. What would I do with that 2? I would take it and I would substitute back in for UV. So I take that 2 and plop it right here. Okay? So let's do that. 8 times 2 minus 3. 16 minus 3 gives me 13. So the answer to this particular problem would be 13. Again, guys, my best piece of advice here is to use the formula 2 parentheses mid-segment equals base 1 plus base 2. And the reason for that is for those of you guys who are not so good with fractions, it's going to make the algebra behind these problems much easier to solve.